Sky News Studios in Melbourne, live. The Bolt Report. Now, Andrew Bolt.
Look, I know, I'm not naive. I know that every election turns into a parade of liars and character assassins, the dregs of politics. But you have to draw a line. And today, I draw the line at one of the nastiest and most misleading forces in Australian politics. GetUp, the far-left lobby group, very influential and funded by our most radical union, the CFMEU, and led by this man, Paul Oosting, who the Financial Review once listed as 9th in its list of Australians with the most covert power. Oosting's bio claims that the GetUp boss is just a nice guy who is passionate about creating a more fair, flourishing and just Australia. More fair? More just? Hey, why don't we check what Oosting and GetUp really get up to in this election campaign? Last week, they got caught out telling their volunteers to tell a complete falsehood when ringing voters in the seat of Kooyong, where they are trying to get rid of Treasurer Josh Frydenberg. GetUp instructed volunteers to tell voters that Frydenberg had voted to get rid of Malcolm Turnbull as Prime Minister. A falsehood so obvious that even ABC host John Fain called it out in an interview with a shameless and clueless Oosting.
The words in your script are, and your volunteers are saying to people, Josh Frydenberg was part of the coup that removed Malcolm Turnbull as Prime Minister. That is either misleading or downright wrong.
Well, I don't think he became Deputy Prime Minister by accident, did he?
He's not Deputy Prime Minister. The leader of the National Party is.
Apologies. Finance Minister by accident.
Treasurer. So,
we'll get there eventually.
Your words that you're putting in your volunteers' mouths, do you concede they're wrong? Was part of the coup that removed Malcolm Turnbull as Prime Minister?
Well, there was undoubtedly a coup that he was part of within the Liberal Party as Australians saw it play out.
He wasn't, but if you think that's bad, check out what Oosting and GetUp are now up to in Warringah, where they're helping so-called independent Zali Steggall, a global warming extremist like them, to beat local member Tony Abbott, the former Prime Minister. Now this week, Oosting, who, to remind you, wants to be fair and just, Oosting and GetUp put out this ad mocking Tony Abbott's history as a surf lifesaver, his years of volunteer work to keep fellow Australians safe.
Help! Help! Tony! Someone's drowning!
Look, I think you'll find that the science isn't settled on that.
What? Do something!
Why should we act first? I think I've given you the response you deserve.
What a nasty, highly personal and cheap trashing of Tony Abbott's volunteerism. And Abbott's history of service goes way beyond life-saving, and I reckon way beyond what 99.9% of GetUp's members have put in to helping others themselves. Abbott has also volunteered for the Rural Fire Brigade, saving houses and saving lives. He's volunteered often to help Aboriginal communities, and he's run an annual charity bike ride to raise money for charities like Bear Cottage for dying children. Well, nevertheless, that apparently is a man you should mock, a man you should hate, if you are Paul Oosting and GetUp. Well, so many lifesavers complained about that ad that GetUp did remove it, proving they're not entirely beyond shame. But is that the end of the story? In fact, no. GetUp and Paul Oosting, the man who wants a just and fair Australia, replaced that ad with another one attacking Tony Abbott. And if that first one was nasty, this one I'd call misleading at the very best.
When was it in the hospital? The time was in the Olympic, we were about to be, have water lapping it. Authorised by Paul Oosting, GetUp Limited, Sydney.
Authorised by Paul Oosting. Well, at the time of that conversation that they featured in that ad, GetUp claimed that Abbott and Peter Dutton had been caught joking about the plight of Pacific Islands facing disappearance due to rising waters from climate change. And that obviously was the implication of this ad. And I've got to ask, has GetUp no shame at all, apart from just that tiny bit about mocking Tony Abbott's community service as a lifesaver? You see, I know that this idea that global warming is drowning Pacific Islands has been pushed by lots of alarmists, from Al Gore to the ABC, which put out this, for instance.
Tuvalu, for example, have no part at all in causing the problem, but they will be the first one to suffer. And they've already experienced the impacts, the negative impacts of climate change. So the question is, why should we suffer for something that others did? Land is equivalent to life in our culture. You lose your land, you are dead.
And then, of course, there was this clip that went viral of Tuvalu's climate advisor, now helping to teach at the ANU, going weepy at the Copenhagen Climate Conference.
I woke this morning and I was crying, and that's not easy for a grown man to admit. The fate of my country rests in your hands.
Tuvalu is drowning, weep, weep. Except, of course, the trouble is that, like most scary claims by climate alarmists, it is false. Tuvalu, for instance, is not drowning but growing, according to the latest study just last year by Auckland University's Professor Paul Kench, who said that I studied every island in the atolls there, and he concluded results highlight a net increase in land area in Tuvalu of 73.5 hectares. That's a 2.9% increase in land, not a decrease, despite sea level rises. In fact, he said, land area increased in 8 of 9 atolls. And Kench concluded the islands would persist as sites for human habitation over the next century. Atoll islands grow, you see, and what is true of Tuvalu is true of most of them, as a study by Professor Virginie Duvar of France's University of La Rochelle found. She said data covering 30 Pacific and Indian Ocean atolls, including 709 islands, reveals that no atoll lost land area, and 88.6% of the individual islands, they were either stable or actually increased in area. Okay, let's sum up. Paul Oosting and GetUp got volunteers first to tell falsehoods about the Treasurer. Then they put out a nasty ad trashing Tony Abbott's service as a lifesaver. So nasty, in fact, they had to pull it. And then they put out another nasty ad suggesting that Abbott was laughing while Pacific Islands sank beneath the waves, which just happens to be yet another falsehood. Oosting, we're told, this GetUp boss wants fairness and justice. That does not square with what GetUp actually does. And GetUp, we're also told, is influential. And if that's true, how very sad.